Frankie, can you tell the listeners a little bit about what you do for work?
Sure. So I am an online coach and I work with women, mostly kind of over the age of 35, mostly mums who are looking to lose weight, get into a bit of shape, maybe do a little bit of training, but more importantly, like just to feel a little bit like themselves again.
What do you think are some of the main issues or struggles that they have when they come searching for help with you?
So, like the main one for themselves would be time, and they think like that they don't have time and that they have to do, something that's going to take up a lot of their time, that they have to completely overhaul their lives. And like, so when I chat to them, really, it's about going through the basics, and a lot of this stuff doesn't take up a huge amount of time. Like they think they have to completely overhaul their lives, that they possibly have to be in the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week because these are the things they see online.
Yeah,
And, this is the information they're getting bombarded with. And really, like, time doesn't have to be so much of an issue. Like, in fairness, a lot of them are working. They've got kids, they've got husbands at home as well, and they're doing all of this work in the house. They're doing all this work outside the house. They're dropping kids here, there, everywhere. So they have very, very little time for themselves, but they also don't do very much for themselves at all.
hmm,
That kind of leaves them, in a bad position where I just find like they feel like they're sort of missing an identity. All they do is work outside the home and work inside the home. And it's very little kind of what do you do for yourself? Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? That doesn't have to be spending hours in the gym, but even going for a walk, listening to an audiobook, getting out of the house after you make the dinner just makes a huge difference to their whole self-worth. You know what I mean? How they feel in themselves, about themselves, doing something, around, like drinking water, looking after their fruit and veggies, looking after themselves makes a big difference to just how they feel about themselves. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest change, really.
So let's say there is someone listening to this and they're like, well, I do have fuck all time and I do want to get in shape or I want to, become healthier or fitter or I want to lose a bit of weight. But like, how do I do that if I have, barely any time to myself? Like, is there a concept of you kind of having to kind of help them to focus on? Like, I think we fall into the mistake of thinking more is better, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And like I would say to them as well, because a lot of people say to me, geez, you must be in the gym 5, 6 days a week. I'm not. I
Yeah.
go 3 times a week and that is it. And it's an hour 3 times a week. It's no more than that. And it doesn't have to be. But a lot of them, because they just want to lose weight initially, they don't even have to go to the gym. And that's something they don't realize. And I think it's so out there that you have to be exercising to lose weight, or you have to be, lifting weights, you have to be going on treadmill, you have to be running, and you don't. So a lot of the things that I teach my women really don't take up much more time.
Mm.
Like I have them initially drinking their water. We need to be drinking about 3 liters of water, most women, and no, none of them are anywhere near that when they start. That doesn't take up any more time in their day. Getting enough sleep, again, it doesn't take up any more time in their day. They go to bed a little bit earlier or they stay off their phones for a little while at night. Again, that's not something that's going to take any extra time for them. Those two things alone make such a huge difference to how they feel, to their digestion, to their weight loss, to everything. The other kind of thing we would look at would be their fruit and veg. And again, no one is hitting near enough the amount of fruit and veg they should be eating. Again, they're making the dinners anyway for everybody. So it's really not about meal prepping or any of that. We don't do that. We just don't do it because we don't have the time. But like I give them an idea of here's quick, easy meals that you can make that are high in protein, high in fruit and veg, keep you full. The whole family probably eat them. And we just look at those kind of things, those small tweaks that don't take up too much time in your day.
Yeah, I think when people are listening to this, they're like, "Oh, well, that sounds like such obvious advice. Go for a walk, drink water, eat vegetables." But like simple, I think the misconception people have is that sounds too simple for
Yes.
it to work. Yeah, and I
And
think we,
honestly,
yeah,
yeah, they like that's what people say to me. Like they cannot believe the difference even drinking water makes. Their skin, their energy levels, they sleep better, their digestion is better, and it's honestly as simple as drinking water. And I
mhm,
think people think there has to be more of a secret than that. You
yeah.
know what I mean? There has to be a more complicated thing. There has to be something, that nobody knows about. But people are honestly just skipping over these basics, looking for some, secret hack that doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think people misunderstand that simple just because it's simple advice doesn't mean that it's easy to implement, and it's
Yeah.
actually like you said, because people have no time for themselves, they neglect their health, and they actually neglect drinking the glass of water or eating the
Mm.
vegetables, or taking that extra little bit of time to make that meal for themselves, and then obviously that's when the problems start to fall into place a couple of months or years down the line.
Yeah, like a lot of the women that I work with, before I start working with them, they'll skip breakfast completely. Their lunch might be in a big rush. If they're thinking that they're trying to lose weight, they'll probably have like a veggie soup
Hmm.
and maybe Rivitas or something like that. So when it comes to the evening time, they've pretty much had no protein. They've had
Yeah.
very little food, and then they wonder why are they shoveling all the biscuits and chocolate and everything down their neck as soon as they sit down. Like, because you've had nothing to eat, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? You haven't filled your belly. And like the simple concept of taking the time to, even you don't have to eat the breakfast on, there on the way out the door. It's really busy for moms in the morning getting kids out to school and people out to work and everything. Bring it with you, have it at your desk if you must, but
Hmm.
that you have it, you know what I mean? And it's not a case that you're needing all those calories then later on at night because you haven't had anything in the morning because you've had very little at lunch.
Yeah, I think people they fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I've no self control or I've no willpower because I'm raiding the presses at night, but they don't really they're not curious to ask themselves the questions. Well, why am I raiding the press at night? Well, maybe it's because you've literally ran off steam and you haven't had any food throughout the day, so therefore your body is craving calories, it's craving energy, and that's physical hunger.
Yeah, and like I think it's something women of my age group anyway would have grown up with, like, Special K for breakfast if you're on a
Yeah,
diet with skimmed milk, soup and Rivitas, or a tiny bit of brown bread with no butter for lunch,
yeah,
absolute rabbit food. Um, and it's honestly like they're just eating carbs if they're eating at all. They're not eating enough protein.
hmm,
They're kind of in the mindset that the skinniest self is the best self, that they shouldn't be lifting weights because they don't want to end up looking like men, they don't want to end up bulky, and they're really just coming from like a bad place in, say, the 90s, the 80s and 90s, where Weight Watchers was the thing, and now then maybe probably onto Slimming World, and the scales is the absolute be all and end all. Like, I've had so many women come to me from Slimming World with a really, really bad relationship with the scales, a bad
yeah,
relationship with their food, and it's so awful to see, like, that, as soon as the scales goes up, they panic. They absolutely panic. And it's just about re-educating people that the scales goes up and down every single day. Like, when you think about it, if you're going to drink 3 liters of water during the day, you're obviously going to be heavier later on the day. It's not fat. Like, the scales doesn't equal fat. And that's something that, like, really kind of you need to educate them around again.
how do you do that? Because obviously that is your demographic. It's people who grew up in diet culture, and their self-worth is tied to the number on the scales,
Mm.
and I suppose they're freaking out all the time when the scales goes up, and they're celebrating when it goes down, and they're trying to control for that all the time. Like, that must be a difficult thing to do. I suppose it's reinforcing, or like continuing to have that conversation again and again and again.
Yeah.
You're almost holding their hand, aren't you, and just being like, because I think you can't just give someone advice and then for it to like land in their brain. It has
No.
to be said a million different times in a million different ways, and just reinforce that. I think because if you've been constantly getting messages throughout a decade of you need to be lighter, you need to be this weight on the scales. Like, it takes a long time to unpack that and to change the narrative in people's brains.
It really does. Um, so like a lot of the times these women are going from, say, like a weekly weigh-in, and depending, like, it really is quite individual, but for a lot of people I would probably get them to weigh every day,
Hmm.
and they kind of become
Yeah,
desensitized to the fact that, or not even desensitized, but like more knowledgeable. Oh yeah, I didn't sleep great last night, or I did maybe have my meal a bit later and I've weighed in a bit earlier, and it does definitely help to educate them around that. Um, if people are still feeling really triggered by it and by the regular weigh-ins, I'll stop them weighing
yeah.
altogether.
Yeah.
and say, look at your photos, look at your clothes.
Yeah.
We all have these certain pairs of jeans that are maybe tighter, at certain points in our life are a little bit looser, and we tend to go by how are our clothes feeling, how are our photos looking, because for the most part, for women anyway, you can't necessarily trust what you're seeing in the mirror because, you've got such bad negative self-image and negative body image, so we use a number of tools and body measurements as well. So a lot of the time the women can see, okay, maybe my scales have stayed the same, but my waist measurements are down, or, my hip measurements are down, whatever it might be.
I think
And
that's a good. I think that's a good message as well for personal trainers or personal trainers starting off who might be listening to this podcast as well. Is that there's not one way to do things. It's like okay, I would be in the exact same camp as you, where I think uh, weighing daily is far more beneficial than maybe doing it once a week or whatever.
yeah.
And then taking the average over the week, and that's going to be more realistic. And then actually looking at taking another step back and looking at that over the course of a month. But again, if it's too triggering, then not using the scales at all. But I think personal trainers end up falling into this camp of oh yeah, the scales is great, use the scales, or like definitely rely on the scales, or definitely don't rely on the scales. Where I think it's individual circumstances, right?
Yeah, and particularly when you're working with women, I think not looking at the scales on a this week versus last week. So
Yeah.
because, our cycle will vary, our weight varies a hugely amount during that cycle. So I would say to the women, like, look at your weight in this week of this month compared to the same week of last month,
Yeah.
rather than judging it, because, week three compared to week two is going to be completely different for women, so there's no point in beating yourself up over the way that your body naturally will go from month to month. It's just that, the higher point this month will be lower than the highest point last month. And I think that's a more important thing to be looking at.
What inspired you to become a personal trainer in the first place?
So I left a job in the bank to be at home with my kids. I had two small kids at the time, and I missed them so much. Like I just didn't want to do that kind of work anymore. I was on my way into my corporate job one day and I saw a paramedic help a woman on the dart and just saw the connection between them and how he had helped her. And I was like, what am I doing going in here trying to get money back off people that we had lent out? I don't want to do this job. Like, this is not for me. I want to help people. Like that's what I enjoyed about being in the bank in the first place. By the time I went back after I had the kids, it wasn't the same type of job. The
Mm.
economy was different. And I said, I'm leaving. And everyone was like, you're mad, don't leave a good job with a pension. You've no plans, you've nothing to do. But I said, look, I'm doing it anyway. And when I was at home all the time, it's difficult. You're minding two small kids, you're stuck in the house on your own, you've no kind of adult conversation or connection. And I joined a TRX class one rainy Thursday night. I said, look, I'm just going to try this. I'm not sporty. I've never done anything like this before, but I absolutely loved it. And I started going more often. And I was like, I think in a class situation, you don't just go for the exercise, you go for the relationships that you build up with your trainer and the other people in the class. It's just amazing. And I said, look, I can do this as well, I think. So I went back and I did a TRX training course and a boxercise course, and I set up a load of classes around my area and I would teach, it was mostly women. And I just absolutely loved it. We would have such good crack, and the women would come in, they'd work really, really hard, and they enjoyed it, and I just loved it. And I was like, right, I'm going to go back and do my PT. Um, so that's what I did. I went back to Trinity and I did a year-long course. Um, and before that, like I hadn't really lifted weights. It was more like, boxercise, boxing, TRX, Muay Thai, all that kind of exercise.
Hmm.
But I just really enjoyed it, like, and I really found it just so beneficial for my body. Um, but at the time when I was doing my PT course, my sister was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So I almost dropped out, because I didn't want to be spending my weekends in college when I could have been spending them with her.
Yeah.
But she said, no, look, this is really important. I want you to do it. So I would go to college during the day. I'd stay over in the hospital with her at night time and then go back into college the next day. And unfortunately, she passed away when I was kind of in the middle of the course
Mm.
in the January. but I kept going. Um, I think seeing her so sick, she had been really fit before that, and she was really getting into, how her body would feel good from all the exercise that she was doing. And I was just like, "Do you know what? How dare I pick apart my body for what it looks like? How dare I say, oh, your legs aren't thin enough, or, you don't have a six pack or whatever it might be, and not be just so grateful that you have this healthy body that does what it needs to do, that gets you through your life. Like, I'm just so grateful for that. I'm so grateful to be able to exercise, to be able to move, to keep my body as healthy as I can. I just think that's something we just take for granted.
Mm. Yeah, I remember you were talking about your sister at obviously the event on Saturday as well. Did it
Yeah.
change your perspective on life a little bit after that happened?
Yeah, in some good ways and some bad ways, like,
What do you mean?
because it makes you really grateful for your life, but also made me really anxious that, bad shit happens,
Yeah.
you know? And I find that really scary, especially as a mom. More
Mm.
recently, we lost my nephew. My sister was 39 weeks pregnant, and little baby Jack unfortunately passed away. Um, and just stuff like that, although it makes you grateful for your own life, it makes you really anxious that, bad stuff can happen all the time and at any moment. And especially having kids, like your own heart is literally walking around outside your body,
Yeah.
and it's made me like very controlling over the kids and what they do just because I want to keep them safe.
Mm. In what good ways then has it changed your perspective?
Well, like I'm obviously like very grateful to be here, and you just enjoy all of the small moments, like, sitting down with your kids watching TV even is just,
Yeah.
for me, that's something to just soak in, like, and just really enjoy every second of it.
What do you think fitness has done for your relationship with your kids?
I definitely think it's improved my relationship with my kids because I do find, and I'm not the only one who says this, like I find this with a lot of the women that I know and the women that I work with. If you're not doing something for yourself actively outside of the house to feel like yourself, to release some of your stress, um, it's gonna make it very difficult at home. Like it's very hard to work, to manage a house, to raise the kids, and it's stressful. There's a lot going on, there's a lot to do, and you can get irritable and snappy with people. But if you've taken that hour out for yourself and done something, it doesn't even have to be going the to the gym. It could be going for a walk, it could be going out for a coffee with a friend, whatever it might be. If you've taken an hour for yourself regularly, you're a much better person, you're a much better mom. It's much easier to take the little irritations on the chin and not kind of blow up at everyone over it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I find it interesting that you first got into training because, like you said, it was like getting out for an hour for yourself, more for your head, so you have something for you rather than probably like Frankie the mum or
Mhm.
Frankie in work and stuff like that. I think that's also like a misconception that a lot of trainers have is that every single person that walks through their doors because they want weight loss or they want muscle gain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just found like with the classes, that kind of thing is so important. The community, like when I used to coach small group PT as well
Hmm.
in urban fitness in Dunleary, and the absolute atmosphere and the joy you get from it, and people come back for the friendships, and okay, they're working away at the same time, but it makes such a difference. Like people who don't enjoy the gym, I think really could get so much more out of being in classes like that, like your class,
Yeah.
like small group PTs. I think you get so much more from that.
And I've seen clients in the past who like I did group training with them like and sometimes group training like it's not going to be the most optimal all the time, but you don't
Mhm.
need it to be optimal for
Yeah.
some people, especially if you're just coming in from not doing any training at all. Anything is really going to work. Anything's
Yes,
going to help you to
exactly.
see results. And if it gets you to the stage where you've gone from not entering a gym to actually enjoying fitness now, like that can also then be a progression to like, okay, you might do something a little bit more sophisticated down the years where it's like, okay, I'm going to get an online coach and do a one-to-one program and really focus on the specifics and progressive overload and being really consistent with that. I think it can be a gateway into that journey as well.
Yeah, and like that's what I used to say to clients when I was getting them to sign up when I worked in urban fitness, that like invest maybe 3 to 6 months in this. You will learn so much.
Mm.
Like I've said this to women before when I used to teach the weightlifting classes as well. Like you wouldn't get in a car without knowing how to drive, without having lessons. And it's like that, going to a class like your own or like any small group PT, you just learn all those skills that you need. And then you can go off at another stage, join any cheap gym if you want to, and you'll have those skills for the rest of your life. It's
Yeah.
so, so important.
Yeah, and I think it's important to learn them skills because it is like I think people are personal trainers or online coaches are afraid to say it because it sounds like they're trying to keep people in their business, but it is something you should be pursuing for the rest of your life is fitness and is strength training.
Yeah. Like it's, I always harp on about women, like, but that's the main kind of people I work with.
Yeah.
But when we get older and we get into menopause, like your bones get weaker, like women are more likely to fracture their hips. And I
Mm.
think I read a statistic where half of the women that go into hospital with a fractured hip don't come out. They
Yeah.
die. They
Yeah.
get some other disease or pneumonia or something in the hospital, and that's the end of them. You can prevent this or make this as unlikely as
Yeah.
possible by strength training now. Like when you're getting into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, this is kind of your last chance to do it. You know what I mean? So get out there, like, and start lifting the weights and have someone there beside you, like yourself, who's going to show you exactly how to do it. And you can go off and do it yourself then, but like getting those reps in now is just so, so important. It's never too late to start, but like start as soon as you can.
Yeah, I think strength training is literally the only real anti-aging hack that there actually
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
It's so important, and I suppose it's even more difficult for you in your job because you're helping a demographic that was probably put off strength training.
Yeah, like they're so focused on fat loss. And I think even more so as they come into perimenopause and menopause and your body composition changes.
Yeah,
So like you've less muscle, and the more years you go by without doing anything to actively preserve that, the less muscle you'll have, the more body fat you'll have. Even at the same weight, you will look completely different than you used to look when you were 20 years younger. But the only way to get that back and to look really, really good is to lift heavy weights. And heavy is not necessarily you start off with a really, really difficult weight, but it's relative. So when you start off, a small weight is a heavy weight for you, and that will
yeah.
make a difference. And you just keep building that up as you go along.
What advice would you have? Because I didn't know that about you that you used to work in a bank. And what advice would you have for people who, let's say, they're not quite happy in the role that they're in at the moment? They want a career change, but they're almost terrified of taking the risk because they also have responsibilities. What advice would you have?
I thought you were going to ask me for financial advice there. Um,
I need that too.
so do I. No, look, it is difficult. It is a difficult decision to make, but you have to remember that you get one life. And do you want to live it like hating your job or not happy in it? Because, it's one life, but it goes by so quickly and it could be taken away tomorrow. And, you spend so much time in your work that it really could be a big part of how you feel about yourself and how you're feeling in life. So I honestly think you need to take these risks. If it doesn't work out, those are the type of jobs you can always go back to at any stage if you need to.
Hmm.
It's not going to be the end of the world if you do it and it doesn't work out. You've probably learned something along the way.
Yeah. So you've no regrets over taking the risk and going into the career you've gone into.
So a lot of people have that leave insert nightmare. I have the working in the bank nightmare where where I'm back in that office and I'm like, oh Jesus, I hate this.
Um, how would you describe yourself as a trainer? Like, do you think has your approach or your thinking around clients and around training clients has it changed over time? Has it evolved over time?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I just had the two boys, I got into training and fitness after that.
Hmm.
And I was like in really good shape, couldn't understand why are all women not doing this? This is absolutely crazy. Why would you not? Then I got pregnant again, and 6 weeks after my youngest was born, It was COVID, it was lockdown. I had been planning, okay, this next week I'm back to the gym. I'm back to, being back to my usual self. No. So for about 2 years, I couldn't get to the gym. There was my coping mechanism absolutely gone down the toilet. I had this body that wasn't a personal trainer anymore. It wasn't a fit person. It wasn't anything I knew. And I was like, what the hell? But you know what? It put me back in my client's shoes.
Mm.
Before that, I would have been posting pictures of my abs and all of these selfies and everything like that. But I remember sitting in that postpartum body, looking online at other trainers with their abs, and I felt like shit. And I
Mm.
said, I'm not going to do that to anyone else. I'm not doing that anymore. And I think it put me in my client's shoes. It put me back in the position where I didn't have all this time anymore. I had a small baby who was absolutely stuck to me for the first 4 years of his life. Um, I couldn't get to the gym. I wasn't fit. I wasn't in my best shape anymore. And it just completely changed my whole outlook on it. It made me realize that we don't all have this time to go to the gym 6, 7 days a week. And I think it definitely changed me for the better. It made me realize what other women were dealing with again.
Do you think the personal trainers feel like they have this pressure to look a certain way, and by trying to look this certain way, they're actually making themselves less relatable to the people that they're trying to help?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is exactly the case. And I feel like because I don't put up a lot of pictures of myself, and I purposely I'm like that. Like I took a decision not to do that. I'm like, it does make it harder to get clients. And any time I have put up a video or something where you can see my shape maybe in it, you get more clients. It's not necessarily how I want to get clients because just because a personal trainer can get themselves into shape, it doesn't mean they can help anyone else. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like it doesn't say much about them as a coach at all. Um, but I do think it makes it more difficult to get clients if you're not putting
Yeah.
up those kind of
It's
pictures.
also, it's there's also, right, you could think about it from the other side of it as well. Is like, all right, like, is there anything wrong with me showing up in my body to like perform this exercise? And if me showing up in the body that I have helps me to gain more traction, to get more clients, like, is that almost a bad thing if you're like, if the main goal for you is to provide value in that video, whether it's like, all right, I'm showing you how to perform a squat, versus like, let's say a personal trainer who is like just, taking a picture of them at their best angle using a filter, like they don't really look like that when they're relaxed, and using that as advertisement for, you know uh getting more clients in. Like, I think there is a difference there. Like,
Yeah.
I
Oh
don't think
yeah.
yeah, I don't think you should have to hide your body either. Does,
No.
if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I do. I get what you're saying. I suppose it's more like I was looking at pictures recently where this trainer put up I thought people looked like this all the time with their muscles bulging,
Hmm.
their abs,
Yeah.
their six pack going. And it was only because she put a comparison beside it where she was relaxed and
Yeah.
said, like, this, I don't look like that all the time. I'm a trainer and I didn't realize that she didn't look like that all the time. I thought most of these people are going around looking shredded
Yeah.
24/7. And it even makes me go, oh, why don't I look like that?
Yeah.
So I can only imagine for other people, like, how they might not believe like why can't I look like that all the time? They don't look like that all the time, you
Yeah, and I
know?
think that's why social media, it's a hard place to navigate, because it's like, you don't want to contribute to that. You don't want to contribute to, like,
Yeah,
the person who's doing a body check and then giving you like what I eat in a day, and
yeah,
like, if you eat like this, you're gonna look exactly like me. Like, forget about
yeah,
genetics, forget about everything else, forget about the 20 years of training, forget that I'm on whatever
yeah,
enhancements. Like, eat this, and obviously that's wrong as well. But then I think we can overcorrect as well, and like, people
yeah,
can demonize other trainers for, taking a picture with their top off, and maybe they felt good, maybe they were on the beach, and maybe they wanted to take a picture. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong or immoral about that either. I think,
yeah,
it's you're trying to find the balance between that. It's like, you're trying to
yeah.
help the people that you want to help, but also not put too much restraint on yourself either.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's probably, yeah, I'm probably a bit oversensitive about it, like
Well, I think
about
it's definitely,
showing
I think
content.
it's definitely relative to the people that you work with. 100% as well. Like your approach is definitely going to be important for that. But then, like you said as well, like you put a video up of showing your body, and you probably get more traction. You probably get more clients, and you
Oh,
also then you could probably bring them in and help them with what they actually need. So it's like
yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it?
it's a
It's
hard one
like
to navigate.
I do
Um,
find out, all these like photo shoot preps and stuff. It's not just coaches who do it. I see a lot
it's
of,
huge now.
general population people doing it. And like
Yeah,
this was something I meant to speak about at the talk the other day because like honestly, I find people are just walking themselves into a disordered
yeah,
eating
yeah.
pattern,
I
into a
agree.
really bad relationship with their body. They're looking back of at these pictures constantly that they're not able to maintain that shape. They really, really suffered to get into that, unattainable or like unsustainable
Yeah.
position. And then they're posting the pictures of themselves like that all the time. And they no longer look like that. And they're just comparing themselves constantly to it, you
Yeah,
know?
I 100% agree. I think it's the photo shoot now is just the new enhanced version of the 90-day transformation, and then
Yeah.
you're just constantly reposting that picture of you when you were extremely lean. That is just not maintainable, and people think that you look like that all year round, or the same with the photo shoot. So yeah, I
Yeah.
100% agree with that. Is there anything that you would do differently looking back at your career?
Oh God, that's a tough one. Do you know what? I'm kind of glad the way it has
Yeah.
evolved, Like I probably cringe at maybe how I used to show up on social media before I had Nisha.
Hmm.
Um, like as I was saying, as that person always doing the like morning ab checks or constantly, check myself in Facebook whenever I was in the gym. I was probably really annoying the shit out of a lot of people, scaring the shit out of a lot of people. Um, so I definitely think he came along at the right time to make me a lot more relatable and bring me back down to earth again.
Well, I think if you what there's a great thing. It's like if you haven't cringed at yourself over what you did like 5 years ago, then you haven't really grown as a person.
Well,
Or
that's true.
so I think it's important as well. In terms of okay, when your clients come in to work with you, and we talked there about like the photo shoot, and how like people quickly realize that it's unsustainable what they want, and obviously you work with your clients over a long period of time to help them to kind of build habits and make it a lifestyle change that support them for the rest of their life. So how do you help to keep clients motivated past that kind of honeymoon phase of training, where it's like the first couple of weeks they're like, this is brilliant, I love this, why haven't I been doing this the whole
Yeah.
time? And then things start to kind of stagnate a little bit, and it's a little bit more difficult to
Yeah, it's a
keep
bit
people
boring.
engaged. Yeah,
Yeah, look, and that's what I say to them at the start. You're feeling motivated. It's great. Like that's a lovely feeling, but you won't always feel like that.
yeah,
That tends to fade after maybe week three, four, but that you don't have to feel that way to keep doing it. And that's really important. So my women are in a group and we're in a big WhatsApp group, and that community of other women like is so powerful. It really honestly is. So some of them have been there for 2 years with me, and um whenever anyone else joins, they're so welcoming and they all actually help each other. They make my life so much easier. So we'll pop in each day, put in our food, put in our steps. If anyone's having any problems, even outside of that, like because it's a group of women, they're nearly putting it in to the group and everyone's supporting each other and helping each other. And although you start for the weight loss, you're nearly staying for the community, It's such a lovely feeling. And we all motivate each other, and then every week or two we'll do like maybe a little challenge, like a steps challenge, or this week we're looking at actually what we were talking about earlier, doing something for yourself. So give me two things that you're going to do for yourself this week that's not involving your family, that's not involving anyone else, and we'll pop that in the group and we'll say, oh, I went out, I got my nails done, or whatever it might be. And we're keeping everyone updated. We do group calls to set our goals for the month. They're not like totally essential, but anyone who wants to come on them is welcome. And we will also set goals in the group, on a weekly basis or every few weeks and say, look, I'm going to do this week, and you're holding yourself accountable to the
yeah.
rest of the girls in the group as well. So it definitely keeps everyone engaged. And I have found that when people might leave for a few weeks because they've got something going on, and then they'll always come back because they just miss the girls so
Yeah.
much.
I think that's two things you said there, like accountability and community. I think they're essential for keeping people engaged to these behaviors
Yeah.
long term. I think the research even shows that as well. It's like and like I know we're very biased because like we create communities to help people to engage in these behaviors, but that's obviously because it works. Like
Yes,
there's proof that
100%.
it works. So if you're
Yeah.
struggling to to you know do any sort of a health and fitness routine and you're doing it by yourself, like having other people there to support you and to keep you accountable, like I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's massive. Like I have previously worked with people on a one-to-one basis, and it's not as much fun, first of all,
Yeah,
but secondly, like it kind of it wears off,
yeah.
Whereas if you have all these other women, all these other personalities, all this big support system, like I cannot underestimate how massive that is. Like it's really,
Yeah, I
really
think
important.
anyone who has a one-to-one coaching business, they do try to even integrate some sort of community aspect to it because it's too valuable not to do. Because people, as much as like, all right, you'll learn off your coach and you'll get a lot of information off your coach. You learn just as much off working
The other
beside
women.
people who are in similar situations to you,
Yeah.
or maybe just one or two steps ahead. Or also you get to, if someone new comes in and you solve the problem that they're currently going through, being able to explain that to them, like that reinforces what you've already learned as well.
Yeah.
Like that's so important as well.
It's huge. And like all these women going through big life events, we've people in the group who've gone through cancer, who've gone through cardiac arrest, who've gone
Mm,
through loss of spouses, of parents, getting married, people, it's just incredible that everyone's there to support. And even like when my nephew died, they were a huge support to me,
yeah,
huge. And they kept going even when I couldn't.
yeah.
And that was huge to me. It really, really was that they picked up nearly my job for me for, a week or two when I was just completely lost. Like they're amazing, an amazing bunch of women. I couldn't ask for better.
We talked on Saturday as well about program hopping, and you gave a really good answer to that, even in terms of like you not trying changing up your own training. Is that a mistake you see people make?
Yeah, constantly like people want some new shiny thing to do like and again I think a lot of it comes down to social media and
Yeah.
they're seeing influencers putting up these exercises that okay I think they're just putting them up there for engagement
Mhm.
because they're not the exercises or this is not some sort of routine that got you the body that you have
Yeah.
and I think it's quite unfair that they're just doing it for engagement. um like what I really want people to do is stick with something for as long as they can
Yeah.
to make improvements because you can make improvements on a program for a very long time, and if you focus on your performance and if you focus on your results in that way, the body just comes along with it.
What do you think are some of the fundamentals of like a good program or a good gym workout that people could take away from this podcast?
Like I think you don't have to be there 5, 6 days a week doing different push pull leg splits. I think if you do three full body, or even if you can't get there twice one week, you're still doing one good full body session a week. If you're starting from nothing, one full body session a week will make, that's 100% improvement. It'll make such a big difference. I think that is the sweet spot really for consistency for most people. And if you're doing three full body days or even two full body days, you're hitting your muscle groups multiple times a week and you'll see a difference. Like I used to train maybe 6 days a week. And my body's in better shape now doing three full body days than it was back then, doing all these different complicated splits that I didn't need to be doing.
Do you think that comes back to what we spoke about earlier, whereas like more isn't always better, and focusing on recovery as well is really important?
Exactly. And like, as well as not overreaching yourself, because I do know like a lot of people when they start with me and before we have our consultation, they've all these big plans. I'm going to work out 5 days a week. I'm going to cut out this. I'm going to do that. And I just say, hold on, hang on. How many days are you working out at the moment? None. Okay, and you're going to do five. You know, how long is that going to last? Like, do one. When you're consistent with that one day, you can add another one in then. Do you know what I mean? Don't completely overhaul your life. And I think you said this, I think I heard you saying this maybe on a podcast last week, that like the bigger you are or the more unfit you are, the less you have
Hmm.
to actually do to get some results.
Yeah, like the
Like
more
that's an amazing thing
the
to look
more
at.
the what did I say? I think there's like the more you have to change, or the if you have a lot to change, or you're you're in need of making big change, you only need to make actually small change, because
Yeah,
let's say you're 30 kilos overweight. You going out walking every day, like you said, it's like you actually probably don't even need to go to the gym yet. Like
yeah,
you just going from being on the couch to walking every single day, 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. Like the impact that's going to make is massive. It's
yeah,
it's only when you're at a really lean level of body fat, it's like you're gonna have to sacrifice more and more and more,
exactly.
and then you have to ask yourself, is it even worth it? Actually, that's a
Yeah.
good question to ask yourself, or to ask you as well. Like, do you find that you have clients that you've worked with in the past where it's like, okay, so obviously you'll have a lot of clients who'll come in looking for weight loss from you, or looking for fat loss, and do you ever find that it's a case where this person probably doesn't need to lose any more weight, or probably doesn't need to lose as much body fat as they think, and they're probably good the way they are, and
Yeah.
but it's having that conversation can be quite difficult, because it's like, well, they're obviously not happy, so they need to make a change, but like it might not be weight loss that is the thing that's going to make them happy, even though they think it will.
I know. Um, and that, like what you said at the start about the scales, it's a conversation that you kind of have to have a number of
Yeah.
times in a number of different ways for it to land, like, you know, and just about questioning, well, because people just move the goalposts on themselves all the time. I do it myself. I'm like, oh, probably happier if I lose another 2 kilos. Hang on now. Like, what do you need to give up to keep pushing and pushing and pushing at this? Like, is it really what you want? Is it what's going to make you happy? Or should we just look at, so a lot of the time I'll bring them up to maintenance for a little while and let's look at how we feel there. And women are scared of that.
Yeah.
They're scared of not being in a calorie deficit. They're scared of the thoughts of not losing weight anymore, you
Yeah.
know? So it's really about treading very gently with that. And when they do try it and they realize, oh, I have more energy. I'm not
Mm.
putting on loads of weight, I'm actually feeling good. I'm still getting all the compliments from people, and I think just practicing at that slowly and gently can really help.
Yeah, because I remember having a conversation with a client before, and it was like, she came in for weight loss, and I was like, okay, so why did you want to lose weight? I said, because I want to feel healthier and I want to be happier, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And she lost a significant amount of weight, and she was healthier, and she was definitely happier, and. Then she was like, "Okay, do you think we need to drop my calories even lower now, because I haven't lost weight in a while?" I said, "Well, why do you want to lose more weight?" And like then we had the conversation. Well, I wanted to be healthier and I wanted to be happier. And I was like, "Well, do you feel healthier?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'll do it. Are you happier? And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, are you happy with your performance? Are you happy with you know your energy levels, with your mood, all these things that have come as a byproduct? And she was like, "Yeah, I'm happy with all them things." Well, so why do we need to lose weight then? You've achieved what you wanted to achieve in terms of that. And she was like, like I could see her having that battle in her brain, being like, "Yeah, but if
Yeah,
I lose more weight, then I'll be more healthier and I'll
I'll
be
be
more
more
happier."
happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when in reality, actually, you won't, because now you're gonna have to sacrifice more things that actually make you happy, like going out for food with your partner, or do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like you have to train, you have to spend more time in the gym, and not with your kids or not with your friends, and like
Yeah.
you went on this weight loss pursuit so you could improve all the areas outside of your life, but by you continuing to try to lose weight, you're actually going to take away from them things now.
And like I've had that battle myself, before I had Nisha, before I did my personal training course, like
Mm,
I would have been getting lean and getting lean and getting really lean, but
yeah.
to the point where you don't even see that in the mirror. You don't realize how lean you've gotten, like, and it really took over
Yeah.
like everything. The food, I was obsessive about what I was going to eat, the amount of calories I had, what I couldn't eat, like what was basically on my banned list,
Yeah.
the guilt that would come along if you ate one cookie or
Yeah.
one thing that I thought was not supposed to be eaten. Um, and I was so lean, and everyone was like, wow, you look fantastic. But in my head, I was not in a healthy place at all. Like I was possibly the sickest mentally that I've ever been.
Yeah.
And it's an awful place to be, you know?
Yeah,
So
takes literally takes over your life because all you're just preoccupied by food all the time because you've restricted so much food from
yes.
your life.
Yeah. Afraid to like if someone suggests going out somewhere or if my mom suggested coming over for dinner, I'd have this anxiety because I'm like, I can't eat what she's making because it's not my food, you know, and
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not managing each little macro that goes into that, you
Yeah,
know?
it's probably the most difficult part of coaching. It's trying to find that line between, okay, is this behavior of being in a calorie deficit or whatever or training, is this improving your life? And then yes, it is improving
Yeah.
your life, but now we're taking it to the point where it's actually taken away from your life. And how do we pull back and how do we have that conversation? Because also I do think that for some people it's necessary that they actually go through that process to understand that it isn't going to make them happy. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to get really really lean to be like, okay, that wasn't it. I did
Yeah.
it, but that wasn't it. And
That
obviously
didn't
that could
fix it.
that yeah, and obviously that can go the extreme end of it where it becomes disordered eating and even eating disorders, and obviously that's not good as well. And like that needs to be addressed. But I think like how many personal trainers do you hear that said they got a six pack just to realize that it wasn't worth it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, but I do find that people are so in the, black and white thinking. I'm
Yeah,
sure you see that a lot yourself. Like even clients who've started recently with me worrying about, oh, I don't want to go on a night out now. And I'm like, no, sorry. Remember that you have to, what you're doing now, you have to be able to kind of do for the rest of your life. You can't just do this for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then go back to the way you were before, because then you will go back to the way you were before. You're going to have nights out, you're going to have weekends away, you're going to have holidays, and it's okay to have them, and enjoy them. Like life is too short to restrict those things out of your life. Don't worry about them.
yeah, you
They
don't.
literally only affect the scales for a short amount of time, and then things come back to normal.
Yeah, you don't learn anything by just staying
No.
at home being afraid to consume excess calories. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's when we talk about kind of the photo shoe trend that's come up. Like that's essentially trainers just putting clients on starvation to take a photo of them to then
Yeah.
share that on their businesses. But I don't think you haven't coached someone how to live their life and to be able to pursue health and fitness and stay at a
Yeah.
healthy body weight while also having a life and enjoying the things that they want to enjoy, which is like the whole point of coaching, I think, is to help improve people's lives.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when I put up pictures of my clients, I try and say, look, this lady has, she's lost whatever it was, 18, 20 kilos, but she still had her takeaway with her kids every single Friday night. She didn't avoid nights out. She didn't give up chocolate. She didn't, and I think it's really important to say all of that, like, you don't have to completely restrict your life. You don't have to cut anything out of your life. You just have to take things in moderation, you
Yeah.
know? And
You
people
you
find that really difficult, I think, to
you
a concept.
You talked about full body training there, and I would completely agree. I think it's probably the best modality in terms of getting people started as well, because it is so flexible. Whether it's you're doing 1, 2, 3 sessions a week, 4 sessions a week, even. Do you have any kind of like structure that helps people in terms of, okay, well, like I'm listening to this podcast. What the fuck is a full body workout, Frankie? Like, do you have any advice in terms of structuring that for people?
Well, they can get on to me. I'll give them a full body workout, no problem. Um, so like, okay, well, you're thinking full body. You want to do your glutes.
Hmm.
You want to do your chest, your back, your shoulders, your abs. Just looking at it in that way, picking one exercise for each thing, starting off with what you Like for me anyway, I love to focus on glutes. So starting off with what's more important to you. Some people might prefer to work on their back, put that as their top exercise. You know, if you want to work on your glutes more, put that as your first exercise. Whatever you want to put the most focus on, put it at the top of your workout, and then obviously the lower priorities down towards the bottom.
Mm.
Just structuring it that way, you know. Maybe looking at 3 or 4 sets of the first two exercises, 3 sets of the second two, and then two more at the bottom, maybe 2 sets if you've got time for those ones.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note there for people listening as well, because I think the I think a mistake that a lot of people make when they first start on the gym is doing like 5 exercises for the one body part, and like
Oh
wasting
yeah.
wasting so much time in the gym, and they're like spending 2 hours in the gym, and it's like you've done fucking 12 exercises.
Yeah. Yeah, so like even picking, so a lot of time, like I'll say to the girls, if you don't have time to do, because generally I'll give them 6 exercises, five or
Yeah,
six exercises. If you don't have time to do all them, do the top two. Do you know what I mean? If you've only got 25 minutes or whatever to get to the gym, I'd rather you go and spend 20 minutes on the first two exercises, which are the most important, that'll get you the most bang for your buck, and leave the rest, you know,
yeah.
but you've still kept up that habit of going to the gym, even if you necessarily didn't have time. And I think that just helps with the consistency. But do like even Googling some full body workouts would probably be helpful, because I've seen, like I've spoke to a girl the other day when I was getting my nails done, and she was telling me that she was only going to the gym 3 days a week, but one of her exercises that her coach gave her was bicep curl, and then she had alternating bicep curls. She was doing a lot of the same
That
exercises.
makes no sense.
Oh, you know, it just didn't really, a lot of things she was telling me, it didn't make sense necessarily for the goals that she had, you know. So making sure that if you are working with a coach that you're communicating, well, like this is what I might like to focus on, you know, if you had something in mind. So that's more relevant to you.
Looking back at your own kind of gym journey, is there any mistakes that you made early on that you could share with the listeners that might help? Um, Obviously we spoke about full body workouts, being efficient. Obviously we spoke about how, you know, more isn't always better. You don't actually need to spend 6 days a week in the gym to see results, and sometimes by pulling back, you actually get better results by doing maybe 3 or 4 sessions, and prioritizing recovery. Is there any other kind of mistakes that you made early on in the gym that might help
Yeah, so
clients?
like two major things. First one be not like eating properly to fuel my
Yeah,
sessions. So, you know, worrying about maybe not eating carbs, or you know, just not even eating enough calories, that
yeah,
what was I actually doing? Like I wasn't going to get anywhere. I wasn't going to get the results that I wanted by not doing that. And then on the other side of things, maybe where I was very particular about tracking my food, but I was going into the gym and I wasn't tracking my exercises. I wasn't remembering what did I do last week for this weight, what did I, you know, what did I lift for this, that, or the other. So I think if you are results focused and you are looking to get results, track your food, but track your workouts as well. Bring your notepad and pen in, which I'm old school. So I see people doing it on their phone, but like I have my my notepad and my pen, and I write down everything. And people have come up to me and asked, why are you writing down what you're doing? Like I'm never going to remember every single thing. And then at least if I'm looking back at the exercise from the week before, I can see what progression I can make. Okay, I can add on the rep here, or I can add on, you know, the weight here. And I think looking after both sides of the house, if you want to get results, track.
yeah. Yeah, I continue, and I continue to say to the school fitness members when they're in class, because they're on an app when they're in doing their training sessions,
Yeah,
and I'm like, log that set in, log that set in,
yeah,
log that set in, and they're like, I'll do it later when I go home. I was like, you won't do it later when you go home, you'll
no,
forget. And like
yeah,
what gets measured gets improved, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
That was something that, like, when I started working in urban fitness, I got them to do, because you know, they were coming in each week and they weren't necessarily progressing, because, you know, who can remember what exactly they did? Um and I don't think, like, a lot of people don't like to be on their phones when they're working out, and that's absolutely fine. That's what I'm like as well. So bring your notepad and pen each week, and write it down that way, you know?
I always say when I see someone in the gym with a notepad and pen, I was like, that person's come to work. Do you have a moment in your training journey where, or we've talked about this a little bit, but like you've started to focus on your focus shift from aesthetics to performance?
Yeah, it's like a couple of times. Like I'd have to say when my sister was sick, that was like a
Mm,
light bulb moment for me to be like, why everything is not about how you look, how your body looks in particular, and that really kind of changed that for me. Um, but it's also easy to fall back into old habits, like the mind keeps traveling back down certain ways. So when you're not, at your best mentally and stuff, you can find yourself. Well, I find myself falling back down that rabbit hole of, oh, well, if I focus on what's here on the outside, that'll fix me. But it doesn't, you know what I mean? The
mm.
work, the real work's obviously on the inside. But yeah, it can definitely like bring you back down that road of looking at, oh, what do I look like again? But I've found that working with a coach has helped me to focus on my performance because he's expecting a certain level of performance each week. And so it forces me to look at that side of things rather than, oh, what does my body look like,
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think that's yeah, and that's a. I think that's also a big issue when you have clients come in to work with you and ask you, or like, I want to lose weight, and you know, if you dive into that a little bit deeper, it's like, why do you want to lose weight? And it's like, oh, I want to be accepted by other people, and I think, that can be a very difficult thing to try and work around, and it's like, trying to do this for yourself and not for other people, like it's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, and I have also found, like, with regards to fixing what's on the outside, a lot of clients, a lot of people, when they start working with me and, I'm having a conversation, we're having a chat, they've lost someone
Yeah.
recently. And like, I know what that feels like to think, well, if I just work on this side, it will fix what's going on in my
Mm.
brain, all the grief that I'm dealing with, and I suppose it's trying to explain to them that, okay, this will, like, it's going to help you to do something for yourself. It's going to, but it's not going to fix the grief. Like, nothing's going to take that away,
Mm.
Um, getting out for walks, eating healthily, getting enough sleep. Okay, they do help a little bit, you know what I mean? Because they do automatically help with your mental health, but like
Do,
it's not going to take it away.
do you find that people will get into fitness to suppress that feeling rather than to actually help themselves?
Yeah. Initially, I think that's, that seems to be the thinking that
Yeah.
I'll fix that. And if I can change how I look, I'll automatically feel better.
Mm.
That's kind of the initial thinking. I do think that some of the actions that you need to do to get in shape, like getting to the gym, like that, it does move that kind of energy out of your body. And I've honestly found that so helpful. Like literally, this is what would have got me out of bed after my sister passed away, and what got me back to, eating normally and, being able to move myself, like after my nephew passed away as well. Like it's just honestly, all that energy that's stored up in your body, it is a healthier way to release it because oftentimes when you're grieving, that can just shoot out in anger, you
Mm.
know. So I don't necessarily think that it suppresses it, but it maybe moves that energy in a healthier way, even getting out for a walk or getting outside in nature for a little bit. It just releases some of that or gives it a healthier outlet, maybe.
Yeah, like everything can be a coping mechanism, right? But like, I
Yeah,
mean, it's probably like being obsessed with the gym is probably a healthier coping
healthier.
mechanism than being,
Yeah,
down in the pub or whatever
yeah,
else you can find. Um, but I think, yeah, like you said, extremes for anything isn't going to be
yeah,
healthy. So if you're using the gym, and I've seen this as well, I've seen this even like with people who have gone through a breakup and stuff like that, where like they're in the gym every single day for like 2 hours a day, and it's like they're just looking for a distraction from the
yeah.
pain rather than
From your
dealing with,
feelings.
yeah,
Yeah,
rather than dealing with that. And it's like, you don't want to deter someone from, exercising or go to the gym because of all the positive benefits from that. But then also there's like, uh your body isn't going to fix everything. It can fix a lot, but it's not going to fix probably everything.
yeah. Like a lot of time people need therapy along with, going
Yeah.
to the gym and looking after themselves. And I think like having a coach or someone to be able to say that to you, look, you could probably do with talking to someone, and a lot of my clients do. And I think it's really important to encourage that side of things as well, because you can have the healthiest body in the world, but if your mind is not healthy, what have you got really?
Yeah.
You've got nothing.
Yeah, 100%. Do you have any advice for people dealing with grief as someone who's gone through it?
Yeah, like it's really difficult, I suppose, and everyone's individual. And, but I do think talking to people who have gone through it, because, maybe your partner or your best friend or whatever hasn't been through that, and not in a bad way, but they don't have a clue what that is like. It's really a horrible club to be in some ways. But if you speak to someone who has gone through it, they'll just be able to help you see that, like, at the start it's all encompassing, and it completely takes over your life, and that it will never ever ever go away, but it just becomes that it's not everything. You know what I mean? You sort of build your life around it, you carry it with you, and you build your life around it. And I think speaking to people who are maybe a little bit further down the line can help give you a little bit of hope back,
Yeah.
that, okay, things will never go back to the way they were, but it doesn't have to be the end of my life, that everything won't always be, you'll have happy moments. There'll be sadness associated with all your happy moments, but everything won't be always fully sad.
Did you find it harder or easier to continue talking about your sister after she passed? Because I know like people go down like different ways of dealing with it. Where some people, when like someone passes away, they they don't really talk about it that much, and then some people they're happy to always kind of have conversations about that person.
Yeah, like I definitely find it better to talk about Sinead. Like I
Yeah,
want to talk to everyone about her, and she knew so many people. And to be honest, like that was one of the main reasons I took the job down in Urban Fitness, because she had worked in a hairdresser's around the corner. So a lot of my clients ended up being people who were her clients as a hairdresser, and like I absolutely loved that connection with her, and I'm still friends with all of her friends, and my family would, we talk about her all the time, like, and always celebrate her birthday, celebrate everything really that we can. It helps for me to keep her closer. um, so I can understand why people sometimes might think you don't want to talk about them in case you get upset or in case you upset anybody, but you're upset anyway, I think,
yeah, yeah.
and it definitely helps for me anyway to talk.
Yeah, I know from myself anyway, between me and my brother, like my brother never ever talks about my mom. And I like I'll
Yeah.
always I like I when someone says that, like I'm happy to have a conversation, and it doesn't even make me feel upset. Like I just like to do it. I think it genuinely helps, and I think even like the act of writing and stuff like that has really helped me as well to grieve.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's a nice thing to even talk about them like they're still here. I think it
Yeah.
helps.
I read a quote somewhere about like alchemizing it. Is that the word?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You take this
Pain.
awful pain, but you can turn it into something wonderful,
Yeah,
and I think that's such a tribute to them,
yeah.
to be able to take their life, and all the things that they meant to you, and be able to use it in a powerful way. And I tried to use like that connection with my sister and being healthy to help other women, and
Yeah.
to connect with people. And I think that's really, really important. And it's a lovely legacy to have. And I can see that you're the same with your mom, and that, what you've been through, it helps other people, like, and that's just huge.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's like the best way to the thing that you're struggling with, if you can teach or help someone else who's struggling with it, it almost heals you as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's it,
Um,
exactly.
I've two more questions for you, Frankie, and then I'll let you go. So, where do you think the fitness industry is as a whole right now? Like, is there parts of it that you like, parts of it that you don't like? Um, what's your opinion on the fitness industry as a whole?
Like, obviously it's a confusing place for people with everything that's going on in social media, and like we were saying about the photo shoots and everything just being about aesthetics. But I do think I am quite hopeful, because I've seen like a lot more coaches with your point of view, that you're there to help people and actually improve things. And I do see a lot more coaches posting like realistic, helpful tips and stuff like that. It's not all about your body image, it's not all about being the tiniest version of yourself. You see yourself and Kelly and Emma Dowling, and a lot more people like that coming up in the fitness industry where you're actually there to help people,
Mhm.
and give them practical, realistic advice. And I actually think that's just such a good place to be. I think maybe people need to possibly look through their social media like feed and delete people who aren't making them feel, or who are making them feel triggered or making them feel shit or making them, unhappy in themselves, and follow more people who are giving out proper practical advice.
Yeah, because
So I'm quite hopeful about it.
that's the thing as well. It's like it depends on the echo chamber that you're in, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like for me, when if someone asks me about the fitness industry, in my head is like, well, I know thousands of great coaches. I
yeah,
think they're all brilliant. Like I know so
yeah,
many great coaches, but then like someone who isn't as like in the crux of the fitness industry as I am, like someone could be, listening to the most horrendous, toxic advice
yeah. And like I'm
possible.
not on TikTok or anything,
Yeah,
so I can't say for that,
yeah,
you know what I mean? I've heard a lot of bad things about skinny talk,
yeah,
and like I fear for young girls, you know, but in saying that, in the gym where I train, there's some young girls in there and they're doing pull-ups, they're
yeah.
in doing huge bench press, they're like really, they're working very, very hard and getting very, very strong. And I think that's so good to see. And like some of the guys, the coaches that work there have said to me, like, these people aren't going out drinking anymore. They're going out having a sauna on a Saturday night and they're in training early on Sunday morning. Like, and in a lot of ways, like that's a good thing to see as well, more of a health focused trend.
Yeah, like
Right.
if it's there's a big difference between like the 80s and the 90s where it was like drink culture was at an all-time high, diet culture was at an all-time high. And
Yeah.
then if you and I always say this about like people like the kids on TikTok now, it's like they're all looking to lift heavy, like, be strong, like focus on wellness. Like it's a very different dynamic to
Yeah, isn't
20,
it?
30 years ago.
Yeah, it's nice, but it is good to see that the kids in the gym, like I know people
Yeah.
give out about them, but I love to see them there. I think it's fantastic for them.
And then last question I have for you. So, any advice for like new personal trainers who are just getting into the industry from your experience? Where do you think they should start?
I suppose just looking at like, okay, you probably love the gym, you love lifting weights, but maybe thinking about things from a client or a potential client's point of view rather than your point of view. So looking at what are their problems, what do they feel like, what are their major restrictions that they've got going on, and answering those problems, how can you help them with those?
Yeah, that makes
That
perfect sense. I
forward.
always like that saying. It's like um, being a good personal trainer isn't about being into fitness; it's about being into people. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, I think if you're focusing on the client rather than what you enjoy, because a lot of people think that, oh well, I'm good at the gym. I go to the gym all the time. That makes sense for me to become a personal trainer.
Yeah, yeah, I think like if as long as you want to help other people,
Yeah,
not yourself,
yeah,
I think that's probably the main thing. You'll be
yeah.
good at it then, you
Yeah.
know.
Where can people go if they want to keep up to date with what you're doing, your work? If they want to inquire about online coaching, where can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram, Fit with Frankie.
Fit with Frankie. We will leave it in the show notes. Frankie, thank you very much for today.
Thank you so much, Carl.